When I was 6 years old, my mum, my dad, our cat, and I lived in a small motel for a short period. Space was tight, but we made it work. Almost immediately, we noticed our cat acting strangely. Every time we put him inside his travel cage, he would let out these desperate, miserable cries. We figured he just hated being confined, but the intensity of his screaming was unusual, even for him. Eventually, my parents got fed up with the noise and decided to move the cage to the opposite side of the room. The second we placed the cage in the new spot, the crying completely stopped. But something even stranger took its place. The cat wouldn't go to sleep. Instead, he sat at the door of his cage and just stared, and blinking and motionless sat the exact patch of floor where his cage used to sit. My mum has always been deeply superstitious, and the cat's sudden, fixated behavior gave her a terrible gut feeling. She walked down to the front lobby to talk to the desk clerk, asking straight out if anything bad had ever happened in our room. The clerk hesitated for a moment before admitting the truth. A few years back, the room had to undergo a massive renovation and got a new carpet installed. A father had murdered his young child inside that room. The clerk then added the detail that made my mom's blood run cold. When the police arrived, they found the poor child's body laying right on the carpet, in the exact square footage where our cat's cage had originally been placed. Whatever horrific energy was left behind on that floor, our cat felt it instantly. My mum demanded a room change right then and there. Once we moved to a room with no dark history, our cat never cried or stared at the floor ever again. There's a small, run-down motel just outside of my hometown that my dad and stepmom booked when they came to visit me a few years back. Since I wanted to spend as much time with them as possible, I ended up staying in the room with them. Right away, we noticed something was off with the electronics. The room had an old, cheap box TV mounted on the wall. It wasn't a smart TV, and it certainly didn't have any sleep or wake timer settings built into its ancient menu. Yet every single night we were there, without fail, we would be jolted awake in the dead of night by the TV suddenly blasting on out of nowhere. Bright blue light and harsh static would fill the room, forcing my dad to get out of bed and manually shut it off. We tried to laugh it off as bad wiring or a faulty outlet, but the final night proved it was something far more deliberate. Before going to sleep on our last night, my dad explicitly turned his cell phone completely off and set it down on top of the wooden dresser across the room. It was an old-school flip phone, simple, reliable, and powered down. But at right around 3 o'clock in the morning, the room went cold. Suddenly, the screen on the flip phone lit up in the dark. Without anyone touching it, the phone powered itself on. Then, it began to cycle through every single one of its built-in ringtones, playing each chime from start to finish, like something was scrolling through the menu and testing them. It went through all 5 or 6 tones, one after another, in complete silence from the 3 of us. As soon as the last ringtone finished, the phone went black and powered off. My dad jumped up, grabbed the phone, and tried to turn it back on, but the battery had been completely drained down to absolute zero. They packed their bags, left the motel, and haven't set foot on that property ever since. When I was 14 years old, my family's home was completely destroyed by a devastating house fire. With nowhere else to go, we had to stay in a local hotel for a few months while everything got sorted out. By that point, the layout of the building was second nature to me. One afternoon, I stepped out of our room and turned down the hallway to head to reception to ask for some extra towels. The elevator was only supposed to be a short, brief walk from our door, but as I kept walking, the elevator never appeared. I kept stepping past door after door, but the corridor just kept stretching out infinitely ahead of me. The wall lamps, the patterned carpet, The doors, they were all repeating in a surreal, endless loop. 5 minutes turned into 10, and 10 turned into 20. Panic set in like a physical weight. Tears started streaming down my face as I began to sprint, crying out, but the hallway just stretched farther into the distance. It felt like space itself had warped, trapping me in a seamless, unbroken pocket dimension of the hotel. And then, just as suddenly as the spatial glitch began, I took one final step and arrived right in front of the elevator doors. The bell dinged, the doors slid open, and everything returned to normal. I stepped inside, trembling uncontrollably. It never happened again for the rest of our stay, but to this day, long hotel corridors still make my heart drop. My friend's grandfather used to work in a historic hotel with roots stretching back hundreds of years, all the way to the violent era of the English Civil War in the 1600s. The building itself was ancient, heavy with history and full of creaking corridors. For years, it was just a unique, historic property, till one late evening after the guests had retired, when the grandfather was alone downstairs, cleaning up the dining room. Out of nowhere, the temperature in the room plummeted. He looked up, expecting a draft, but instead saw a terrifying scene unfolding in front of him. Bursting into the dining room were 3 men, clad in full 17th century battle armor, holding weapons high, tearing across the room in a full-blown violent charge straight toward him. Before he could even move or scream, the 3 armored phantoms slammed into him, passing straight through his physical body as if he were made of air. The soldiers vanished into the wall behind him, leaving absolute silence in their wake. But the physical toll was immediate. Coming into direct contact with the spectral charge left him violently ill, dizzy, and trembling with a sickening cold nausea that lasted long after the apparition had faded. Shaken to his core, he decided to hire a psychic medium to investigate the hotel and figure out what was lingering in the building. The second the medium stepped into the space, she completely freaked out, overwhelmed by the oppressive, dark nature of the presence trapped there. Driven to find answers, they began digging into the ancient town records and historical archives of the property. What they uncovered confirmed the nightmare. Centuries ago, during the chaos of the English Civil War, a brutal murder had been committed right inside that very building by 3 rogue soldiers. Whether you're a believer in the paranormal or not, some violent acts leave a mark on a place that time simply cannot erase.